Hi, I'm Danielle, and this is Chatter Out Loud, a podcast where I share thoughts and TV commentary on shows I like to watch. Now, before I start, I want to ask that you go ahead and like, follow, share, and subscribe. And on YouTube, where I upload my companion episode of my podcast, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. This way you can get a notification every time I post a new episode, and you won't miss out. So welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. Your presence is very much appreciated. All right, let's chat a little bit about what we're seeing on the live feeds, and I'll give a brief recap of tonight's episode. All right, starting with the feeds. We saw Kevin's secret task, right? Production, quote unquote, leaked some time he had in the DR where he was given instructions. And basically, he had to convince the other house guests he was self-evicting. I suppose it was entertaining. I guess. I mean, I did laugh, especially at Josh's reaction and the crying. Everything was over the top. Kevin was very... it just was very theatrical. I guess that's the word. I mean, it was so over the top. And then, I mean, he played along. He packed his bags. He put the bags. I don't know. He was getting ready to walk out the door because it was a secret task from Big Brother. They opened the door, and as he was walking out, Josh and the crying and calling out his name, Kevin, Kevin. And then he stopped and turned around, and everybody was like, I knew you were playing. I knew you were playing. And then Marty yelling, you didn't fool anybody. When we're looking at Josh sniffling, obviously Josh was fooled. I mean, the way he was carrying on, Kevin, and grabbing his face. I guess at this point, I knew. Maybe I saw this in Josh before. He was so emotional. Maybe everybody's getting worn out and stressed out because just him, the way he was crying, I'm like, what is going on? All right. The renoms. Remember, Marty is the HOH and he nominated Betty and Josh. Betty won power of veto and she pulled herself off. And surprise, Gino was nominated. So he was the replacement nominee. And supposedly the way he was nominated was by drawing gummies. Yep, they drew gummies. Marty called everybody in the room, the five. That's what they're calling themselves, the five. And he pulled the five into the room and gave this big speech to rally the troops. And it kind of, in my opinion, I thought it was a way of him removing all responsibility off of him in terms of nominating someone, right? And so he pulled them all in the room and saying, we're together. We got 3 more people to get out. We work together. And he gave this big speech. And if we do this, we will be considered the biggest alliance in BB history. And I'm like, no, sorry. BB23 had a 6-person alliance that went all the way through and actually had a strategy. And now all of a sudden it's the 5. Like they weren't an alliance, right? I mean, they kind of worked together, but they didn't have like a strategic session to say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, you know? Or maybe they did, like this side of the house or that side of the house. But all of a sudden now it's the 5. It's this big alliance and they had this strategy and they're playing so well and all of this. But this is what Marty is saying to all of them, you know? And he was making them promise Canada. You heard them say that they're going to vote out Josh. It just was a whole big to-do. And anyway, I think it was a mind game. And again, it removed the responsibility off of Marty, right? So if that person happens to go home, he has an out, you know? We drew gummies. Remember, we all talked about we're on the same page. Anyway. So he gathered them all together, the 5. And he says, anyone I put up is kind of moot because we know that person is staying. He gave the speech like I just talked about. And he said, I'll tell you what, guys, I'll add an extra gummy. Now, I don't know what the extra gummy was about to draw from, but whatever. But he was adding an extra gummy. I don't have history with these gummy drawing things. Maybe this is something that happened in BBCAN history in another episode. I mean, another season. Was this done before? I remember seeing Arissa tweeting eyeballs after this happened. Like, was this a big deal? I mean, it was funny as I don't know what. I mean, him offering, I'll throw in an extra gummy and having them draw. Anyway, I don't have the history. Someone has to educate me on BBCAN history. That is. Anyway, the whole thing seemed like theatrical. Maybe it'll help with ratings, I guess. Remember a couple of updates ago, 2 weeks in a row, the season was barely making the top 30 in programming. They were like between 27 and 30. 27, 28, 29th place, something like that. So maybe they're doing this like the Kevin task and the drawing of the gummies to help with the ratings, I suppose. But anyway, Marty had them draw gummies, and the person who had the off-color gummy, I think they were all red if you drew a yellow one, or if you drew, they were all yellow if you drew the red one, something like that. But he put the gummies in the thing, everybody grabbed them, and he said, hold your hand closed, and we all turn them over together. And Gino drew the off-color gummy, and so Gino was on the block. So maybe this will make for good TV. I don't know. Anyway, moving on to tonight's episode. They showed us the HOH comp. It was Mount HOH. They had to hold on to icicle pegs and press their body against the side of their chutes. And they just had to hang on as they had water poured on them. And they threw not fake, but the foam rocks. They threw them so it was bouncing on people's head. After a while, they would add rules in the game. Like after the competition goes on for hours and hours, they start to add rules. Like you can no longer use one hand and things like that. We've seen that in other competitions. But anyway, so one of the rules, the first rule was they could no longer lean on the side of the chute, right? So they had to hold on with their hands and arms, and they couldn't use their body to press against the side any longer. And then once that happened, that began to eliminate people. And a couple of observations during that game, Marty's faces, the faces he made during the comp, it was alarming. I had to turn away a couple of times. Kevin was the first to fall, and we expected that because he looked like he was struggling before the competition was underway. So he was the first to fall, and I think he fell at 8 minutes. Marty eventually won, but Betty gave him a run for his money in this comp. She came in second. It's not a win, but she did outlast all the others after what? I think it was like 4 or 5. No, Summer fell at like 4 hours and something, and it was 5 hours, another hour after that, before Betty fell. And Betty was so upset. And did you all notice how no one congratulated Marty? They were all consoling Betty because she tried so hard, and you can tell it hurt her because she was so close and she was all into it. She was trying her hardest. And they were all consoling her, and Marty was just standing there with a towel over his shoulder looking like nobody's saying congratulations to me. And then, of course, afterwards, Marty's telling Canada he's so alone. I just can't with Marty. He said, maybe my family will be proud of me for winning. Man, that could be true. I know I wasn't happy to see him win. And as long as he has his family rooting for him, I mean, nothing else matters, right? Gino falling asleep during the HOH comp. Yes, it lasted over 4 hours, and I might not have paid attention to him falling asleep, but for the fact that he criticized Summer for being too comfortable in the house. Remember that? I want to put you up, Summer, because I need to teach you a lesson. You're too comfortable in the game. I want you to show the competitive side. I don't know. Falling asleep in the middle of a game seemed pretty comfortable to me, Gino. And it really would have served him right if they just voted him out. you know, while they have a chance. They should vote him out. I mean, the arrogance. He just fell asleep. And that just showed he isn't even worried in the game, right? He's so comfortable. He thinks he's going to win and get to the final two. Marty's winning. He's winning. He's so comfortable, you guys. He fell asleep. He didn't even pay attention. Who cares who won the HOH, right? He needed his rest. He's so comfortable. And it's arrogance to me. And I don't like it. I hope he gets voted out. All right, what else happened? Oh yeah, Marty gave up his Wendy's meal to Helena and Betty. He allowed them to enjoy the meal with each other, opposed to him taking part in it, because he won HOH 3 times. That's what he said. Since I won HOH 3 times, I thought it would be nice if you two, because neither one of them had experienced a Wendy's meal. And I suppose that was nice, right? That was a nice gesture. It really doesn't change my mind about Marty, but I thought that was nice. What did you think? I thought it was nice. All right. Dan from season 7 was the person to give advice. He won his season and he was... No, I said I wasn't going to say anything about that. He won season 7. He gave advice. So he made an appearance. Okay, I'm going to stop there. By the way, this is the one thing I do like about BBCAN, and I wish BBUS would adopt this in terms of the Wendy's, right? Because I'm a fan of Wendy's. The Wendy's segment and having the HOH give like a little tip. And it doesn't even have to be Wendy's. It can be whatever. But, just so you can get a previous winner to just come in and give a tip. I wish we would adopt something like that in BBUS. And the spinning of the wheel for veto players. I really like that. I don't know if that was just unique for this season because it was a game theme type of season, or if they do a wheel like that every season. But I like the wheel. And I think I am liking that the HOH doesn't get to play in the veto. I think I'm liking that too. Oh yeah, and it was great to see them announce Summer winning Canada's vote for safety. I thought that was nice. Finally, in my last update, I talked about how I was surprised and disappointed in Josh. I feel like he became a little slimy in the way that he was talking about Betty and how he has no loyalty to Betty. And she's like the ride or die. I don't understand Josh's gameplay. He thinks he's so embedded in the crash test dummies. And I'm disappointed in Josh. Tonight was an example of what I was talking about in the episode. The way he was apologizing to Marty, saying that sometimes Betty does or says things and that's not his personality and he doesn't stand for that. And it just was disgusting to me. And I wonder how she's going to feel after she watches this episode to see that, when they're out of the house. Anyway, I didn't like him. And if it weren't for Gino being on the block next to him, I would hope he would be the next one to go. I'm over Josh. I mean, he's cute and all, but he can go. But not before Marty, not before Gino, not before JC Lynn. I mean, we have to keep our heads in the game, After those 3, Josh can go. Just the way he was apologizing to Marty. I just want to apologize. Ugh. Anyway, so I gave a few updates from the feeds. Kevin's secret task, like he was getting self-evicted. And then Marty's gummy draw. That was the 2 exciting things that happened on the feeds. And I gave you a brief recap of tonight's episode. And a little hope that Helena and Kevin will make the move and vote Gino out. Let's hope for that. We don't need them both to do it. Just one and it's done. Do you think that will happen? You have to let me know what you think in the comment. Thank you very much. All right, that's all I have. So be sure to come back and give me a listen. I'd love for you to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Leave me a comment, and I'd love to engage with you. All right, my name is Danielle, and you're listening to my podcast, Chatter Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining me, and as always, I appreciate your support. And that's all I have. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.